Hey, welcome to Grace Speaks, the Grace Church podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Chris Colabella.
And I am your other host, Alexa Morion.
And if you've been listening with us, then you'll realize that someone is missing today, and that is Katia Gonzalez.
Katia.
Play the sad song track now. But we do have two guests with us today as we add another episode to our series called Gracelings, where we talk about what it was like to grow up at Grace, maybe even raise kids at Grace. And those two guests are
Debbie Colabella
and
Chris Colabella.
Two of my favorite people in the world. And we're going to be asking them some questions about what it was like to grow up at Grace. So, Alexa, you want to ask them the first question?
I have been dying to. Yes. All right. Question one for you two. First, introduce yourself to our listeners. So, who are you and how long have you been coming to Grace?
Well, I'm Debbie Colabella, and I have been coming to Grace, we were thinking of this, about 40 years. We were both in high school.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah, 40 years. I think it's just about 40 years, maybe a little more.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Since high school.
Yes.
Maybe that's going to be me one day. I'll be in your seat, and I'll be like, yeah,
Well,
I've
you've been coming here since you were little.
I was, 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So that was the first question. Super easy. Well, why did you choose to stay at Grace? I mean, you guys have been here for 40 years. Why did you choose to stay?
Well, we wound up at Grace by accident.
Oh, really?
Yeah. My brother, his girlfriend was going to Grace, and she invited us out. Remember, it was a Christmas Eve service, wasn't it?
Yes.
She invited us to a Christmas Eve service back in like 79 or something like that.
You don't need to
No,
say
it
the
was
year
the
if you don't
80s.
want to.
It was the, it was the 80s.
It's
Okay.
the year of the puffy hair.
Maybe 1980. I'm not sure, but yeah. And we came, and they stopped coming.
Wow, really?
Yeah, it's interesting. So we came, and we really liked it. It was.
What was it at the time that you liked? Was it like the teaching? Was it the dramas?
Was that Armin part one?
No,
This
no,
was
this is-
pre-Armin. Pastor Heinrich was actually the
Oh, okay.
pastor here.
Yes.
And he actually took us aside and said he wanted to speak to us and met with us in the office. And he explained to me what salvation was.
Whoa.
Oh, wow.
So he actually brought me to salvation.
So like you came for a Christmas Eve service,
Yes.
and then you got sent to the principal's office.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did he do? Like, did he just come up to you and be like, "I need to talk to you," or
No,
did he
no.
like?
Well, Chris you had actually been here one other time with Neil without me.
Yeah.
And he said, Chris, I'd really like to meet with you.
Yeah.
And so Chris asked me if I wanted to go, and we both went, and he met with us. And, he asked me, do you know who Jesus is? And I was like, oh, yeah, sure, but never really knew Jesus as my Savior. And he explained it to me in a way I had never heard before.
Wow.
And he really loved on us, both him and his wife. And at that time, the church was small, maybe
Maybe 150 people.
I was about to say, how big was the church that he would like
It was
single you out?
It was about
like that?
150.
Yeah.
Well, a weird thing happened the first time I came here. If you were new, well, they knew you were new, and they would ask you to stand up
Yes.
and
Yeah.
introduce
Oh,
yourself.
really?
Yes.
Hey, where are you from? And everybody'd come up to you afterwards, and
Yeah.
they got your phone number.
They
Yeah.
would.
And then if you
People
didn't
would come
show
to you.
up, like the next week, they'd call you. And they
Oh,
did. They
wow.
called me.
Oh
Oh my
my
gosh.
Like, where were you last week? And I'm like, where was? What do you mean? Where was I? And yeah, it was really cool because they definitely took an interest in us. It was really amazing.
That's
Like,
awesome.
They certainly, I think, and there are people that were there that stayed for probably 20 or 30 years after that, right?
Wow.
And they passed away. Older folks who,
Like the Kubaks,
Yeah.
the Ericksons.
yeah, the
you know.
Ericksons. There was a lot of older folks who were
Yeah.
like, "There's young people here. Let's
Yeah.
let's obviously get to
Invest.
know them." And
Yeah.
and they did, and they
They
really
did.
did.
That's really cool that they did that.
Yeah.
They did. And they even told us years later, after we were married several years, we always prayed for you guys.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so sweet.
It was. We didn't even know that they were doing that, but they knew us as teenagers, and they just
Yeah, from the
they
beginning,
just prayed for us, and they
Yeah.
loved us. They really, they did. They loved
it
on
was
us.
interesting because like I didn't understand that kind of like love. You know, like
Yeah.
I went away to college and they would send me stuff.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
like
Like
care
care
packages.
Yeah, I'd get a
oh,
care
that's so
package.
cute.
Anita,
Cookies.
Anita Sunheim.
Anita Sunheim would send me cookies all the time
Oh,
Wow.
with a note and a little devotional.
Those must have been gold.
It was amazing. Yeah. So it was. So when I came back from school, I was like, I felt, I don't want to say obligated, but I felt like, you know what, these people, I gotta go see them. And they would say,
Yeah.
hey, you gotta, where are you? You know, when's school? Like they would ask you, like when's school out? When are you gonna be back home? When you?
Yeah.
And you know, make sure you come, you know, stop in, see me, and we would do that. And yeah, they were very attentive to us.
Yeah.
They were like, would you describe them as kind of like family? Kind of like
Yes.
extended
Yeah, I was gonna say
family?
like
Yes.
extended family, like visiting your
Yes.
cousins or something.
Yeah, they were
Yes.
like a bunch of older guys who said, all right, here's a young man who's in college, and they really took an interest and discipled me. Like this is what you need to do. This is what it means to be a man. This is how you need to act. This is
Yeah.
how you need to treat a woman. This is how you need to, you know, worship. This is, you know, what's important. And
Wow.
I didn't know a lot of that because we were really unchurched people before
Yeah.
we started coming here.
Yeah.
We didn't have any church in our families.
Wow. That's awesome. That's kind of cool because that's kind of how Alexa and I described our experience in the last Gracelings episode that we did, where we were like, you know, we'd go away to college, but then we'd come home and we'd feel like this is
Yeah.
our family, you know,
Mhm.
like the people who were here were investing in us, like growing up before we left for college. And then when we came back, we were like, well, where else would we go? You
Yeah.
know? That's awesome. That's a really good reason to stay. That was the reason that we stayed too.
I mean, yeah, it's a common
Well,
theme.
Well, you know what it
That's
does.
good.
It,
Still going on.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's true. It really we really felt a commitment, you know, to this church, this body, from the beginning, through all the changes, because there were a lot of changes since that
Yeah.
time, and we knew that we just, you know what, we need to hang in here. This is our place, you know.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Okay, so what is your favorite thing about Grace?
Yeah, we thought about this a lot, and the thing that really strikes us is how the word is taught, you know, because when Pastor Heimer asked me about Jesus, you know, it's just like, yeah, I know who Jesus, but I didn't
He's
really
a super
know.
cool dude, yeah.
Yeah, and then, you know, when we heard the message, it was like profound to me. I never heard it really before, and to this day, it's presented in such a beautiful way that sticks to the scripture in a way that we can understand and touch everybody's life, I believe, that comes through the doors, you know, a new believer or an old believer, you know.
Yeah, I mean,
So
you come here, you're going to get truth,
you're going to
Yeah.
get truth. Yeah.
and that really, I mean, I understood a little bit, you know, before I started coming to church, because I like to read, so I would read all kinds of stuff, but I never really saw it. I never saw it in people's lives, and I came here and I saw it in people's lives, and it was the, you know, the testimony that, and it's interesting because we would come on Sundays and people would actually give testimonies every Sunday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
people
That's cool.
Sunday night service.
Sunday night service.
Yeah.
There were testimonies. Everybody, I mean, not everybody, but people in the congregation would stand up and they would give a testimony about something that happened that past week, and it was compelling. I mean, it was definitely when I would hear these things, I'm like, yeah, God's working, you know, and it was real. It was real.
I think that's like a big difference maker when you actually see like the gospel and everything that you're learning about actually playing out in people's lives.
Yes.
Instead of just like, okay, I'm being like fed this, I'm being fed this, I'm being fed this, but I don't know how to live it out because no one's living it out around me. But then when you actually like see like, oh, this is someone living out the like truth of forgiveness that Christ has given them, and then they extend to others, and like how that was a testimony in their week, or how they had the opportunity to show mercy, or someone showed mercy to them, you know, and then you kind of start to build like your repertoire of like examples, and then be able to live that out on your own in your relationship with Christ. And we used to do testimonies too when we had like New Year's and stuff like that.
And Thanksgiving.
And
Yeah.
Thanksgiving.
Oh, yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember that was really cool too. I remember standing up and saying like thank you to everybody, because I just felt like that was my opportunity to just like thank the church for the testimony they had been in my life too, you know. So testimonies are definitely super powerful. I wish we did more of those.
Well, it was the sincerity of it all too. Everybody was. I mean, people are really sincere.
Yeah.
And it was, it was back then. It was a time when, we were really searching for something that was like stable. At least I was, and it was really, to see people that were sincere, and they did what they said they were going to do, and they truly took an interest in you. And if you spoke to them and they said how you doing, and you told them how you're doing, they're like, really, and they're truly interested in how you're doing. It's like
they're like actually following.
They're
up.
actually and they're and like the next week you'll see them. Hey, how'd that go? Something you talked to them about the week before. You're like, wow, this person really listened, and I remember some guys in particular who would follow up even during the week, give me a call and just like, how's it going, and it was the sincerity was really it was real. I guess that's the people were real.
And giving you a call wasn't as easy as it was today, right?
That's right. They'd have to call my house, and somebody would have to get me a message. And if I was away at college, I didn't have a phone at college. Who could afford a phone? So, I'd call home from a payphone or something. They say, oh, so and so called from the church, and I'd make it a point to catch up with them. And,
that's another level of intentionality there.
Yeah.
Which,
right. The communication wasn't as easy.
Yeah, because now you could do text messages, FaceTime,
Mm-hmm.
video chats. Like, there's so many options.
Yeah, definitely. So here's our next question. What is your favorite grace-related memory? You have 40 years worth of memories to look back on.
Choose one. No, I'm kidding.
I
You
have
can
a
pick
funny
few.
one that I remember is when Chris was getting baptized. We had a pastor here, Pastor Jewett. He was a very tall, thin man. And when Chris went down, he dropped him.
No way.
Yeah, when I was getting baptized. Well, Pastor Jewett was, he was like an interim pastor. We were between pastors. It was between Pastor Heinrich and Pastor Summer.
Okay,
and he came in. He was an Army chaplain from Florida, and he was a great guy. I mean, he was one of these guys who, there was like a glow around him. You know what I mean? He just he was oozing the Holy Spirit.
That's cool.
He was just a really sweet guy. Him and his wife, they loved us. These people, we loved them. But when he was baptizing, it was the funniest thing. He was just like he was like a weak. He wasn't that strong. So And I'm a small guy, but he literally just I don't know, he lost his grip and I went right down. I went down.
And then he was on the
and so it was
Extra baptism for you.
it was fun. It was funny.
Yeah.
But it was interesting. That was a nice memory, but a funny memory, right?
Yeah.
That was a funny memory.
Hey, if you have more than one memory you want to share,
We'll
I'm
allow
open
it.
to it. I'm
Yeah.
open to it.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different memories. Some of the things that I really, just looking back, had more to do with our small groups. We had the small group where we were involved with other couples who had children, and one of the funniest memories I have is when we would go to this small group and we just had babies, us and the McDermotts, and there were some other couples that had babies, and Andrew McDermott was I'm going to use his name. Andrew McDermott.
We love name drops. Go for it.
He was in his car seat, and every time you turn the fan on, he would start pumping his legs. He would kick his legs to the point where he would knock the chair over.
Wow.
So he would get so excited because of the fan. You shut the fan off, he would stop.
Oh my God.
Really?
Yeah. So
that is an Andrew thing.
So I
can see him doing that now.
Yeah, I could
We
see
should
him
test
doing
it.
Yeah.
But
Someone turn a fan on.
Those memories of so it's not just one memory, but the memories of us having children together with our small group, and us all having children and raising our children, and our children becoming best friends with these other kids and growing up, and till this day they're still friends. So it's really cool. So when I look back, to remember that is it's sweet, because you just see where they are now. They're approaching 30 years old. Yeah. And they were newborns.
And now they're starting their
now
generation.
exactly.
Yeah.
Now they're starting to have children.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of you see that whole evolution of the church body.
Yeah. I mean, I went to the McDermott's Bible study too, and now Andrew McDermott is my brother-in-law.
I know.
Grace connection.
I know.
Full circle right there.
That's right.
Actually, I went to one of the, I don't know if you guys remember this, but you at one point the two of you did a Bible study with the kids. It was like break point or something like that.
Yes.
And they had those like binders, and one of them had a mountain climber on it. The other one had like
Wow,
an
you have
eagle.
good memory.
I have, yes, I've been told.
Yes.
And you guys were my leaders, and I was just thinking about that, and I was like, oh yeah, that was
funny.
such a fun time. Because I think I might still have the binder somewhere actually.
Wow.
That's really funny.
Because there was
Believe it.
2 parters. It was the mountain
Yes.
climber was the first one, and then I think or maybe it was the eagle was the first one, and the mountain climber was the second one.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Do you remember we used to do Friday night activities? We had like Friday night
Dodgeball.
dodgeball,
Oh
basketball.
yeah.
So some of the fun times that we had here were those Friday nights.
Yeah.
And it was usually myself and one other dad, and all the kids would come out. It was like a zoo. And
Okay.
and things would get broken in the church, of course, and we would get blamed for it. But they were just amazing times, just to come here and just see all the kids just having a great time. And it was just different. Now, kids are all caught up on their devices, and they're playing whatever video game is popular at the time. Back then, it was kind of like they were looking for something to do on a Friday night.
Yeah.
So it was kind of cool to every Friday night meet at the church, and we'd get pizza or something, and then the kids would go wild for a couple of hours. And
Well, if it's any encouragement to you, last month we had what we're calling like our first Wednesday events, while you guys have first Wednesday service at the Randolph campus. Over here, we kind of just hosted a hangout event, and we had like 70 kids there.
What? That's great.
Yeah, and they were playing dodgeball. They were playing board
great.
games
Did
with
you
each
play
other.
like that 9
That's
square
great.
thing,
70
whatever that
kids,
thing is
that's
called?
great.
Yeah, so like that kind of passion and stuff, it's still prevalent, and kids are still wanting to get out and hang out with each other. They're not just like all digital, I think to some extent COVID has kind of fatigued them from looking at a screen for so long, so yeah, good stuff.
Okay. So, how have you seen Grace grow / change over the years?
It's definitely gotten larger.
Yeah, you guys said you had 100 people when you started coming.
Yes, 100 people. We didn't have the wing that we have now.
the education wing wasn't
Oh
there.
yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
It's grown in size tremendously. The programs, so many different programs are available. The ministries, the opportunities, it's just.
It was kind of interesting because it kind of grew with us, like as a family as we were growing. The wing, the family ministry wing, was built in 1993, and Benjamin was born in 1993. So we had instant nursery, and so the kids started coming along after that. So they kind of grew up in that wing, So it was
like new when Ben was born.
It was almost like,
It
the
was.
Colabellas have a kid. We
Yeah.
need a wing for them. Let's go.
That's right.
Well, it was funny because I was doing the interior finishes, picking all of that, and I remember being very pregnant. And
You're
doing
thinking,
that.
my son is going to be in this room.
Yeah.
Wow.
So-
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That must have been a really cool feeling. Like, I'm picking the colors for my church where my son's going to hang out. Like,
Yeah.
that's fun.
Yeah.
No, it was cool because over the years we got to really, work in every capacity, from raking leaves to, I did the board work to get the wing done. Appearing before the planning board in Roxbury and handling all of that stuff, working with the architects and the engineers, and so it was kind of cool. And then Debbie followed up with a lot of the interior stuff, and so it was kind of neat. So we got to do that and watch the growth, physically, the physical growth of the facility.
Yeah.
And then, of course, watch the body grow here.
Yeah.
And then watch the programs grow and to where we are now.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool.
It was cool. It's really neat to just see how the church evolved, all in a positive way, by the way. Really.
Yes.
There were changes throughout the years, and there were some flat moments, and we kind of plateaued at periods. But you know what? The truth was always spoken,
Yes.
and the people just kept coming, regardless of who was in the pulpit, regardless of what was going on. The truth was told, and the people came.
Yeah. We were kind of talking about that in the last episode too, just about how like there has been a lot of change, but our core values as a church haven't changed,
And
and
that's
like
to speak the truth and, to do that.
Yeah,
and
so-
like you said, Chris, like no matter who is in the pulpit, we still do that no matter who it is or
Yeah.
whatever. It's like, because our truth is the Bible, and that's not going to change.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's awesome.
that is the core.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the question that you are not prepared for,
Dun dun dun.
but I think is going to be a really good question, and I'm interested too. So, how has it been being parents at Grace Church? Because you were teenagers, and then you were young adults, and then you were parents. And I mean, all of your kids, they're out of the, they're not out of the church, but they're out of the like youth group
programs, yeah.
and like young adults. Now they're having kids or out of state doing their own ministries and stuff like that. But what was it like? What was it like being a parent at Grace versus being, I guess, a teenager at Grace?
It was great because there was many opportunities for our kids, to, Sunday school, VBS. For me also, I homeschooled my kids. We had a homeschool co-op that Grace allowed us to conduct here every Friday.
Yeah.
So my kids grew up, the church was like their second home,
Yeah.
to come here for that, to come here on Sunday, to come here, midweek. I mean, it was fantastic. The friendships that they've, made, they still have. It's been wonderful, to raise our kids here, I mean, we grew here, our kids grew here, it's been
Yeah, it was interesting
great
to
place.
watch Debbie and a couple of her girlfriends put together the co-op, and they started this Bright co-op. Is it Bright co-op? And to watch our kids, grow up, and then on Friday, it was Fridays, right? The Fridays you guys met. Go to the church. That's where the co-op was, where we go to church.
Yeah.
So it was kind of, the church was like our life kind of revolved around being at church. And
Yeah.
the kids kind of understood that, and I think it really had a big impact on them, because they were hearing the word all the time, and it was good because to come to church on Sunday, and there was good solid programs on Sunday, and then Wednesday nights there was good solid programs on Wednesday night when Debbie and I were involved in the Wednesday night programs.
Yeah.
And then and we did Friday night. We did the Friday night. And that was actually before co-op, when we did the Friday. Oh, no, was that after co-op?
It was during.
During co-op. Okay, maybe it was during co-op. I forgot. But so we would do literally the co-op on a Friday, and then Friday night we would be back in the gym. I mean, so Sunday you're at church. I mean, so we were here all the time, which it was great. I mean, it was a great place to raise our kids. It really was.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's encouraging to hear, because it goes along with our vision statement, which is to raise up generations of families that are built to last. So
You guys are like the epitome of that. You came here, and now you raised your kids, and
Yeah.
and your kids are going to start raising kids
yeah.
here.
Well,
Yeah.
I think I'm sorry, go ahead.
I say it was great too because it met us at every stage. Like we were teenagers, we came here, and then when we became parents, I started with MOPS, and I made
Great program.
Great program.
Women's ministry plug right here.
Yeah, and the friendships I formed there. I wound up doing life with those people.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic and so I had that with my kids, and then beyond that to have VBS, Sunday school, and then the Wednesday night youth group, just so many things to meet me and my kids at every single stage of our lives.
It's interesting because we always think to ourselves when we ask the question, how do you measure success in the church?
Yeah.
And I look at it as the changed lives that occur at the church, and how the church impacts families. And I see it in my own family how the church, this church in particular, has changed our family. And I think that's the measure of success. That's the measure of, in my opinion, success in a ministry. And that is what our mission is, of course, raising up families that are built to last, and to see that play out. I mean, that's the measure.
Yeah.
And I really feel that it's played out in our family.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool. All right, Alexa, last question.
Oh my gosh, pressure on. Okay. So what do you think God has in store for the Grace community?
They both looked at each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we talked about this, like, what is it? I mean, I don't know. We kind of talked about how, God has opened up Bethlehem Church and how there's this college right across the street, and how, opportunities are there to reach beyond our walls in a brand new way.
Yeah.
True. So, I kind of see Grace, going along the path that it has already with everything that it offers, but maybe reaching beyond our walls a little bit more than we have, So, and that always comes to my mind, that college right there.
Yeah.
I
mean, CCM is like right
it's
across
the street.
Yeah.
What's the saying? A stone throw away? I don't know.
It
Stone's
really
throw away.
is,
Okay.
and if there's an opportunity to reach, young adults there, in some way, I think it's a fantastic location to do that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, we need to really maintain our core values, but adapt to the culture a little more.
It's true.
Yeah.
And bridge the gap. Our congregation tends to be a little older,
Yeah.
and we need to bridge the gap, and meet the needs of the next generation. And it happened when we were kids.
Yeah.
We went from singing hymns,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Which-
now the contemporary.
which and we watched the evolution of worship. And Debbie and I actually, we really liked the hymns when
Yeah.
and that was for
I still do.
she still does.
My
But
mom's on the same team. She loves hymns.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so we watched that evolution from the time we were teenagers, and how the worship primarily was the big, like, sort of cultural change,
Wow.
in the church. Everything else pretty much stayed the same because we were true to the word,
Right.
Yeah.
So that didn't change, but kind of establishing more common ground with the community in that sense, because I think at that time, hymns were, becoming old-fashioned,
Yeah.
and the younger generation wanted to hear something a little more hip, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So
That's really interesting that, like, worship is the thing that you look back on and say, that's what created the shift. Like, that's what.
Well, we went from I remember it was like a pretty big deal going from hymns to contemporary.
It
I think
was.
my memory is towards the tail end of it because, I wasn't
well,
around all the time.
there was a philosophical difference in some minds here at the church at the time that caused Pastor Heinrich to decide to start a church in is it in Randolph?
Flanders.
Started in Flanders.
Yeah.
Great guy, great family, but he just felt strongly that he needed to be true to
His convictions.
exactly his convictions, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
And Grace, the body at that time, and there was 2 boards at the time. They made a decision that they really need to move forward if they're going to bring in younger families and they're going to grow and really meet the needs of the community. They need to be a little more modern. I guess that's the way they put it at the time.
Yeah.
So it was interesting to watch that evolution of how they were reaching out to the community and how they were attracting younger people.
Yeah.
And I think we're at a point now where we kind of have to do that again.
Yeah.
Where we have to maybe change things up a little bit to attract the next generation of minds. And there's a whole, different way I think that worship can probably be conducted. And even the delivery of a message, so
Yeah.
I don't know what that is, frankly, but
Yeah.
I think we're kind of at that point in our church.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Those are some great insights right there. And I think that's a really good way to end with just some food for thought in terms of, what is the next move to reach the next generation. We've appreciated your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for
Thanks
coming
for coming
on.
out and just sharing your experience. I think one of the things that's really cool about this series is it gives us a place to point to when someone says, okay, well, why is Grace Church a place that I should bring my family to raise my kids in the faith? And then we can say, well, like, listen to this, podcast, listen to this testimony real quick, and you'll see a family that, brought their kids up here, were raised here themselves, and the fruits of that, and how that's impacted them and even on to the next generation. So
I just realized that our podcast is kind of like a testimony time if you think
Yeah.
about it. We're all just kind of sharing our experiences here at Grace.
Yeah.
So it's kind of sort of bringing back the testimony thing without having a testimony night.
Yeah.
We're kind of doing it.
Yeah.
You are. It's true.
That's cool.
In a new way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a way to get the new generation.
Well, what you should do next is you should interview our children
Yeah.
to
Ooh.
see how they were impacted, and they all have managed to stay out of jail and all the drugs and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
but they're all doing very well, and in fact, one of our sons is in the ministry.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
the I think the fruit of what has happened here is these changed lives. These kids.
Actually, that would
Yeah.
be a really cool follow up. Our next Gracelings will be
Their
Colabellas Part
kids.
2.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That'd be
and
cool.
they'd be willing to do it.
Yeah. For
Well,
sure.
Thanks
I
for
like
having
it.
us, guys.
Yeah, no,
thanks
thanks
for
for
being
coming on.
And thanks everybody for listening. Just stay tuned for our next podcast, which is going to be coming out when, Alexa?
It's the second week of April.
Okay, nice. And that is going to be a behind the sermon.
Yes, that's the plan.
Sweet.
And we'll have a surprise guest because we never reveal who our behind the sermons guests are.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks guys for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Mhm.